how's it going from Mickey and from me? Well, we have an awful lot of ground to cover today, so I am going to plunge right in. Anna Ross says, so many people have been saying how regrettable it was for Haz to fail to attend the memorial to his grandfather's illustrious life. I've said it myself often enough, but given how the Harkles are so in love with media attention, perhaps his stroke their non-attendance has garnered the duo even more media focus than their presence would have. It's certainly been constant. Could the decision to not attend have been strategic? Well, Anna Ross, I have to tell you, it never fails to astonish me how so many of you, in your very perceptive and intelligent questions, shed new light on a subject, whatever the subject might be. And in this case, it's the dastardly Harry and the dreadful Meghan, with their non-attendance at Prince Philip's memorial service. I suspect only the extraordinarily naive would actually believe that this whole palaver was not very strategic. And yes, Meghan and Harry would appear of their conduct to be addicted to press attention, and that there seems to be little or nothing that they will not do to garner it. I don't think, though, that it was only because of press attention. I think they were both, and I could be wrong, but I have been told this by people who know them well, that she would have sooner sacrificed much of what she loves, like maybe her straightened hair, to avoid being booed or having an intake of breath in the Abbey as they arrived. That would impact very adversely upon their brand. They know they are in danger of being hissed if they come to Britain. It's one thing for them to complain about adverse press coverage, but quite another when the television cameras are rolling and people boo them or hiss at them, or there is a sharp intake of breath signifying disapproval. Now, we also need to remember, and this is a really important point, that the British media, by and large, have been very light on Harry and Meghan. ITV, the BBC, bend over backwards to give them positive coverage in a way that they don't give any other member of the royal family. That is also true of many of the newspapers. Unless they are absolutely backed into a corner and have to condemn Harry and Meghan, they don't. I mean, remember, about 60% of the British press is anti-monarchist and pro-Republican. They are bigging up Meghan and Harry, not only because it plays well socially and politically in terms of their social engineering agenda, but also because it plays well where they are concerned in terms of race. The decision not to attend, I am told, was completely strategic. Had they thought that there would have been a benefit to them, according to the people I have spoken to, they would have got on the first private jet they could catch a lift on and arrived, notwithstanding the fact that basically each of them would appear to have an agenda that did not enhance Prince Philip's departure. I'm trying to be very diplomatic here. I mean, I do believe what I was told by that royal, that it was massive payback time, and that basically their non-appearance was, oh, we can poke you in the eye and we're going to. However, the reality is that had they assessed that it was in their interest, their worldly interest, their fame and fortune interest, to pitch up, they would have pitched up in much the same way that Meghan announced great details about the stupendous wreath that she made sure was positioned in a place of great prominence, and was the only wreath that had a description as to the fertilizer that was used to grow the various plants. I don't think she loved Prince Philip any more then than she does now. And if what the royal said can be believed, and I for one believe it, she didn't love him at all. So, strategic, yes. Opportunistic, yes. Spiteful, shall we say possibly, to err on the side of caution. And it all dovetailed beautifully. Of course, wait for when he goes to the Netherlands. Because the laughable thing about it all is that the security was stupendous because there were so many heads of state and royals there. Harry didn't need any security at all. Nobody did. Because they were ring-fenced. The whole abbey was ring-fenced with the tightest security possible. That rather gives the lie, doesn't it? To the, Megs, I can't go. The security is at stake. Sally Robertson says, Dear Lady C, while I was watching the coverage in America of Prince Philip's memorial service, I was taken aback by some footage from 1953, no less. Of course, in black and white. Prince Philip was talking about public image. It was very apt. He said, and I quote, I'm very doubtful about the whole concept of trying to create an image because it's easily rumbled. An image develops over time from what you do. How apt it applies to both Meghan Markle and Catherine Cambridge. One in the media forces herself down our throats while doing very little, while the other steadily and with few words reveals through her actions to be thoughtful, caring, and worthy. And what do I think? I think Sally Robertson has hit the nail on the head and has said it so well. I don't really think I need to add anything to this, do you? Because, I mean, really, It's self-evident. Well, I can tell you something. I've lived in the public eye for 50 years. I have had very famous friends. Anybody who is obsessed with image is really too aware of their image. In fact, I would go further. I'd say is aware of their image, is begging for trouble. You have to be aware of your character. You have to be aware of your integrity. You have to be aware not how you are going to appear to be, but what you are representing. You have to take great care to be true, to never misrepresent yourself or your position, and where possible, if it's important, not to allow others to misrepresent you. The British press love to tear down public figures. They have a long history of satirical content, shall we say, almost satirical sadism. They love nothing better than focusing the bright light of exposure on any flaw they can find. And when they can't find flaws, they often make them up and will continue to run with them year in, year out, decade in, decade out, until they are stopped by the force of law. Because if they create your image, they don't like you altering it. But if you're in the public eye, you need to make sure that they don't twist your image too firmly, otherwise, and distort it too effectively. Otherwise, you will suffer. Now, I know what I'm talking about, because for nearly 50 of the years that I've been in the public eye, I have battled against the distortions of the press. But it doesn't alter the fact that I still ensured that I never did anything that I could or would be ashamed of. Until I appeared on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, the public didn't have real access to me. So they never actually got to see me as I really was until I appeared on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Because the fact of the matter is, press reports are usually seen by the public through a prism that often distorts, sometimes positively, more frequently negatively. But once the public get your measure, they usually see right through you. The only person I can think of in the public eye that is systematically misread is the Queen, His Majesty, the Queen of the Closet, because he has an image of being a really great guy, happy-go-lucky, sweetness and light itself, when the reality of his reputation in the media world is he's absolutely reviled and loathed in many quarters for being the antithesis of what he appears to be. How accurate that is, I am not going to say, beyond saying that where I am concerned, he's certainly shown himself to be an ace jerk, having well earned the name Phil the Geek. But the mistake Harry and Meghan make, well, she's really the one who's made it, and he's gone along with it because it answers his deeper emotions. She thought that she could arrive on the scene and everybody would bow down to her as if she was a goddess, and that everybody was going to think that she was as wonderful as she and he both think that she is. And it didn't work like that, because people pick up insincerity. And one of the good things, from my point of view, of appearing in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, was that people, by and large, even those who didn't like me, and there were people who didn't like me, they thought it was a real battle axe, which I can be when I'm crossed. But everybody, I think, conceded that I was honest, that I was sincere, and that there was no side to me. I was what I appeared to be. That's where Meghan has fallen flat, because she's not as she appears to be. People pick it up, and people now pick up that Harry is her poodle, wagging that tail when he's not juggling those balls. Gabe 25 says, "Oh, good grief, just because Prince Philip said that," she means about not marrying showgirls, only stepping out with them, "that doesn't mean he condemned the relationship and never supported it." Well, he didn't condemn the relationship, may I interject at this point. That's not to say he supported it. He certainly didn't mind Harry stepping out with her, but he minded awfully Harry marrying somebody that he thought didn't have the character, personality, or propensity for self-sacrifice and to give royal service. So I will continue. And William, with the nerve to suggest maybe Harry needed to take more time getting to know MM. Harry sure does like running back to his wife and telling her everything anybody said, and often with a twist. Well, we don't know that it's with a twist, but we do know that I know from what people have told me, that what is reported back to her, even if he does it accurately, is spun around by her and converted into something else. So a lot is gained in the translation, let's put it that way. None of these things others have said would I have ever told my wife-to-be. I not only wouldn't want to hurt her, but I wouldn't want to damage her relationship with my family. How very well thought out. Absolutely. People whose mouths run off do a great deal of damage. You know, Harry's obviously never learnt a word once uttered can't be recalled. And also, people say things to you that they might not want you to repeat to someone else, because they are misguided enough to trust you and to hope that you will understand their motives and not scurry back like a rat with a piece of cheese. Harry uses MM to express and act on the vitriol he himself feels towards his family. The wimp he is, he set it up for her to be blamed for influencing him. Harry is actually the conductor of all of this. Meghan Markle is first chair. Well, I suppose, to use it in terms of the orchestra, she'd be the first violinist. So the first violin. So she would be picking up very quickly what the conductor said. But I actually think that she does have her own agenda, and I think that she has used him to advance her own agenda. I don't think that it's totally him, but I think that he deserves credit where credit is due. And I would agree with what you say. He is rather more of a conductor, a conduit for information, than is comforting or desirable. I mean, people say things to one that one is not supposed to repeat to anyone. I mean, you don't run your mouth off. It's stupid. It's also disloyal to the person who has endowed you with the gift of their confidence. Caroline Diamond says, "This is all Harry's fault and no one else can be blamed, not even Meghan. The reason I say this is because if he had cared for Philip, why didn't he come over to be with the Queen? I'm sorry, blaming Meghan for everything when he was raised in the royal family. It's no excuse. I had a very manipulative husband before I'd even heard or known about narcissistic people. Now I realize he was one. Nothing and no one would have stopped me being close to my family in their hour of need." Well, I'm going to pick this up and tell you something that happened when I was married. Because my ex-husband, then my husband, tried to isolate me so that everybody came in for flack and criticism. So I was supposed to be isolated, but I'm not dumb, never was. And I remember I had a friend, still do, a great friend called Mary Michelle Rutherford. To those of you who are interested, Mary Michelle's step-grandmother, Lucy Mercer Rutherford, was FDR's great love, and he actually died in her presence. He would have loved to have married Lucy Mercer Rutherford, but it wasn't possible because he was married to his cousin Eleanor. And Mary Michelle and I have been friends since we were in our early 20s. And we actually lived beside each other in London. And Colin tried to get me to dump Mary Michelle for no reason except that he wanted to isolate me. And I remember exactly what I said to him. I said, "There's no way, Colin, that I'm going to be freezing out Mary Michelle because you say you're not comfortable with her presence." I said, "She's my friend." I said, "When she's around, you don't have to be around. It's simple." I said, "But I'm not dumping her." And then I said, absolutely true words. I said, "Colin, friendship always outlasts romance." Wasn't that the truth? My friendship with Mary Michelle outlasted my marriage by decades. Yeah, nobody in their right mind, nobody allows somebody to play the games that Colin Campbell wanted to play with me and that Harry and Meghan appear to play with themselves and everybody else. It's not life enhancing. Melanie Bliss says, if Rachel hated Philip so much, why did she send a wreath and a note for his funeral? It doesn't make sense to me. Well, Melanie Bliss, first of all, I didn't say that she hated Prince Philip, nor did the royal. There's a difference between being vengeful against someone who has threatened your interests or expressed less than enthusiasm for your character and personality and hating them. So let's keep things in proportion, shall we say. And why did she send a wreath and a note? Because she wanted the whole world to know, look how wonderful I am. I'm just the most wonderful granddaughter-in-law. And I can't go to the funeral, but I'm heartbroken and I love the attention so much. And I want everybody to know what a wonderful daughter-in-law, granddaughter-in-law, and wife and member of the royal family I am. I've got such class that I don't only come up with this broken down, rather ugly wreath, but I've got to tell everyone how wonderful it is. It had the ramgoat roses from the bushes, and it had the poison ivy from underneath the cellar, and it had the laburnum tree. Oh, sorry. Why did they put in laburnum? Because, I mean, you know, Philip was dead. He didn't need to have the tea. It makes absolute sense that she would have sent the wreath and the note because it got her attention. I think we need to appreciate the fact that Meghan and Harry, but Meghan especially, are not only attention junkies, but media junkies. He loves it. She needs it in a way that he didn't. He might have desired it. But before she came on the scene, he managed to be relatively within the bounds of normality in terms of indulging his lust for attention. Now they are like two maniacs, attention maniacs. So I hope that clears that up. Vicky Nay says, well, in my opinion, judging from the US Copyright Office's tweet about, quote unquote, how Meghan shows how it's done, and this is really interesting, this observation from Vicky Nay, because it's important. She spotted something really important. How Meghan shows how it's done. She has sugars and squaddies watching her back there. Everyone better watch it when quoting Harry's memoir. One word too many and the Harkles will have the Copyright Office on their side. So be careful, everyone. Harry is all involved in our military issues and Meghan is running around courting the UN, the World Health Organization, Congress, and now the Copyright Office. Vicky Nay, you are absolutely 100% spot on correct. Harry wouldn't be able to do any of this on his own. Meghan does it. And Meghan she's always been like this. In fact, I'll tell you, that's one thing I discovered when I was writing my book on them, was that she has always been very proactive at creating situations. She sees a scenario, she sees what she wants, she sees what will work for her, and she goes after it. So she has been very proactive. She cultivated the Democratic Party, she cultivated the Bidens, she cultivated the Clintons, she's cultivated all sorts of lawyers. She's cultivated the World Health Organization. You're absolutely right there. And now she has made a study of the copyright, and the US Copyright Office is impressed with her knowledge. And I think you're right. If people quote too much, she will use copyright against them. Remember, she did this with her father and the Mail on Sunday. Now, do you see why the royal said that she's frightening and dangerous? Because she's like a vulture, flying around above, swooping down to pick at the carcasses. Very, very unappealing. Very. But it is characteristic of an opportunistic, exploitative, proactive personality that has no creative ability, but is exploitative and very effective with it as well. She's not to be underestimated. I have said it before and I'm going to say it again. She has ability. She may not be what you regard as admirable, but she has ability. Elena George says, MM has a promo out for her next podcast. She talks in a rather husky new voice that women have been and are now being harassed everywhere. Laugh out loud. Nobody I know has recently been harassed anywhere. It's against the law. Sorry. She's about 20 years too late. Laugh out loud. Well, I laughed out loud, my dear Elena George. Well, you know, what better thing to do than jump on a bandwagon that you're assured of success? And she's assured of success. I mean, you know, it's really so tacky and tiresome, isn't it, you know? And yes, I gather the voice has been deepened because obviously someone pointed out to her that well-bred women, by and large, have deeper voices than women who do not have the advantages of having been born into certain sorts of backgrounds. Now, she was very well schooled by her father, not only in terms of, you know, finding the light, as she puts it, but, you know, he paid for an absolutely top flight education for her from the time she was 2 years old until she graduated from college. And her voice was, though, very upper middle class maximum, upper middle class California. So I suppose somebody pointed out to her that by and large, aristocratic women and royal women have deep voices. So she's deepened hers. Well, she ought to whisper it to the Kardashians because they sound as if they're cats scratching at glass being mewed to death. Annalee Harrison says, yes, the press are mercenary and go with the flow, but as far as the royals are concerned, they go with their own flow, the own being the press's flow, congratulating and backslapping each other and their shared Republican leanings. Absolutely correct. They seem completely out of touch with and contemptuous of the opinions of the majority of people. They don't care about the opinions of the majority of people, my dear. They try to shape the opinions of the majority of people. And when the opinions don't accord with the ones that they are, the agenda they're pushing, they ignore them in the hope that sooner or later you will be shaped into shape. Yet, it is these ignored millions who buy the newspapers, subscribe to the TV channels, and buy the advertised products. That is, who provide the money. Capital T, capital M. So, why do the press doggedly refuse to listen? They doggedly refuse to listen because they have their agenda and they are going to push their agenda. The Rupert Murdoch newspapers are owned by a rabid Republican. And again, not American party politics Republican, state of government Republican, anti-monarchist. Reach plc is rabidly left-wing. They are not going to be any more positive about the royals than they absolutely have to be. However, the relationship is somewhat symbiotic because they need to sell their newspapers and therefore they need to write about the royals. The royals also need the publicity and therefore each one brings something to the table. But it is the relationship of people who don't like each other, using each other, each for his own ends. It's as simple as that. The press aren't gonna listen too much. I mean, they will have their favorites. For instance, Diana was a great favorite of theirs. But then they saw the advantage with Diana because she could be used to poke the royals in the eye. And she did, and they did. So I hope that answers it. Eddie Galtech says, if the Jamaicans want reparations, they should look to Africa because it was the black sub-Saharan Africans who kidnapped their ancestors and sold them into slavery, not the white Europeans. Well made point, my dear Eddie Galtech. Very well made point. But you see, they're not going to because they don't regard the Nigerians or the Ghanaians, who incidentally are very rich countries, as being easy pickings, while they think the British state is easier pickings. That's really what it's about. they're hoping if they bleat victimhood long enough that somebody will get tired of the bellows that they create, the noise, and that they will therefore prevail. I hope they don't, because I don't see why black, white, brown, yellow, or any other colour, if it exists, Britisher should be compensating West Indians for slavery, which was abolished nearly 200 years ago. Ronwyn Carter says, "Dear Lady C, you are much admired and adored!" Exclamation mark. Thank you so much, Ronwyn Carter. That's very sweet of you. I want to address the issue of compensation to colonies. I am a South African, and South Africa, as you know, has a history as a colony. Do people think the British sailed over to a country called South Africa, booked into a 5-star hotel while they cruised the leafy streets to find a suitable property to inhabit? Thereafter, they swanned out to appropriate one of the well-established local enterprises and set about exploiting the locals. Not at all. They arrived in barren nothingness. No infrastructure at all. The British, after winning the southern African colonies from Holland as spoils of war, set about investing in the country. They established hospitals, schools, universities, railways, roads, bridges, and so on and so forth. Perhaps in the spirit of not appropriating culture, we should give it all back. I love it. I absolutely love it, my dear. You are a corker. Mwah! The past is extraordinarily complex and hard to contextualize. Everyone, and I mean everyone, should learn a little humility and keep their simplistic misunderstandings to themselves. Virtue signaling is odious, especially teamed with the perverted moral superiority it so often accompanies. I couldn't agree more. You are an absolute card. I love everything you said. I've read it out because you have, in your wonderfully wry way, made the points perfectly. And of course, the same is true of Jamaica. You know, Michael Manley accused my father's family and families like ours of being white oppressors of black people, stealing out of the mouths of black people. Well, since my grandfather arrived in Jamaica with practically no money and worked and made money, and so did everybody else, they created department stores, they created factories, they created employment, and this was regarded as oppressing people. Of course, the government never created any of this, still hasn't. Still hasn't. Maybe the government that Michael Manley was so busy trying to puff up should have been doing rather more for the people than antagonizing everybody, playing the victim, and preventing prosperity. Well, yes, you've said it beautifully. You've said it much better than I could have said it, and I thank you for it. Leslie Parker says, Will Smith's misconduct at the Oscars is a prime example of black privilege. Had a white male slapped Chris Rock the perpetrator would have been brought up on federal charges and dealt with harshly by America's unfair judicial system and liberally biased media. Will Smith's skin color buys him a pass. That is, he can assault others with impunity without fear of arrest. The Oscars have become trashy, tacky, vulgar, and political. It's doubtful I'll ever watch them again. The industry as a whole has become rather dodgy and suspect. Leslie Parker is an American, I can tell by the spelling. And I will say, Leslie Parker, you're absolutely right. Black privilege gives free passes for black people behaving badly, just as how white privilege did and sometimes does the same thing. And I would actually say, had a white person slapped a white person, not Chris Rock, so let's keep it as white, or a Chinese person slapped a Chinese person, or an Indian slapped an Indian, or a Japanese, in the identical circumstances, there would have been an immediate investigation. Having said all of that, we do need to be fair, and Chris Rock has refused to press charges. Now, of course, very often, when you're on the wrong side of the political divide, even when you don't want to press charges, the police will still press charges on your behalf. So, yes, I think white privilege was bad and black privilege is equally bad. Or to put it another way, privilege is neutral. It's when you abuse it that it becomes bad. Because actually, I take that back. Privilege is not bad. And in every society, there are some people more privileged than others. But with privilege comes responsibility. And you have to live up to your responsibilities. I used to say to my children, just because you are more privileged than other people doesn't mean you're better than them. It means you're luckier than they are, and you need to earn the right to leaven the loaf, and you need to do what is right. It is your duty as a human being, if you have privileges, to live up to your obligations that privileges bring in their wake. Becky Sharp says, I wish I could remember more details when Meghan said this and who she said it to, but she was truly indignant that the royal family and many people in the general public felt that Harry and Meghan should not have given the Oprah interview while Prince Philip lay dying in the hospital. She said the royal family really thought they could use a dying old man to silence her. That is not an exact quote, but very close. I know that statement is somewhere on tape. Wish someone could find it. I was shocked. Becky Sharp, presumably, you're from Vanity Fair, not the magazine, but Thackeray. Of course, it might not be a nom de plume, it might be your name. Either way, I remember it as well. I remember it. So yeah, you're pretty close to the bone there. And I do remember the comment. And it shows how completely callous the woman is. And how, she didn't care. They didn't care. Just because he was ill and clearly dying, wasn't gonna stop them, and it didn't. But nor did it stop Oprah or the television station. So they had collusion, let's put it that way. Nedra Salaya says, well, she said, I wrote to, then dots, and said, use me as you will. A very odd and forward statement, the way she put it. Yes, you are referring to Meghan's claim that she wrote to the Queen and told her to use me as you will, to prove how totally willing she was and open and available to be exploited in any way the royal family chose to exploit her. That was the message. And don't think it fell on deaf ears, because I've got news for you. The one thing royalty and aristocracy do not do if they have the noble code of ethics, because nobility is not only rank, nobility is a matter of character and spirit. They never exploit a situation. They do not, they have respect, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and unto God that which is God's. They know instinctively, and if they don't, it's because they weren't properly brought up, or they're too dumb, or they're too unscrupulous. But if they're properly brought up, they will know that each situation requires an appropriate response. And exploitativeness is milking the situation inappropriately. So when she wrote that, she obviously thought, oh, I'm going to let them know how wonderful I am, and they're just going to think I'm just marvelous, and they're just going to think I'm fabulous. And of course, I don't intend to do any of it, but still, I'm going to let them think I want to do it. And who knows, maybe I'll do it occasionally. Well, I mean, I'm going to make sure that they pay me. So, I mean, it's open for negotiation. So let's see how it works out. But I'm going to do it. And she obviously thought she was going to come across as this marvelously obliging person, when in fact she came across as being an exploitative opportunist to be watched. Language has meaning, and well-educated people understand the importance of language, and they understand the importance of nuance. For all Meghan's good education, she doesn't understand the importance of nuance. It was an odd and forward statement to make, and don't think it fell on fallow soil. It fell on fertile soil. It was yet another clue as to what the royal family had to deal with when confronted by use me as you will. I mean, the self-abnegation was so pretentious, so precious. Just the sort of thing that when one receives things like that from people, one thinks, oh, flush it, flush it, flush it. It should be flushed. And on that note, I will say, I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and please keep the questions coming in. Remember, this cannot be done without you. God bless and goodbye.